Alright guys, we are back this week for UFC Fight Night Perth, Ulberg versus Reyes, with a main event in the light heavyweight division between the former title challenger on a career resurgence and the man who arguably defeated most people's greatest of all time in John Jones and Dominic, the Devastator Reyes, taking on the number one chance for gold in the light heavyweight division out of New Zealand, the number one chance for gold out of the city kickboxing gym, in Carlos Blackjack Ulberg. So without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. Alright guys, no time to waste for UFC predictions this week. We went 3-2 on the Contender Series, picking one of the biggest underdogs on the card in Gisela Chavez. I like that call for myself. And then picking the main event winner in Montas. I don't even want to pronounce his last name, but you know who I'm talking about. Montas coming through with the round one knockout. Missed on Justice Torres. That was just a bad pick. You know, I underestimated his opponent. I thought Javier Reyes wasn't as good as he, was told to be, but he came out and did what he needed to do, and the pressure was just too much for Justice Torres. We picked the round one sub for the first fighter up on the Contender Series, the first fight of the night. Pretty good pick there, but let's move on to this weekend. I like a lot of these fights. I like a lot of underdogs, I'll tell you that right now. And let's kick it off. First up in the women's strawweight division, you have a battle between Loma Lookboonme taking on Alexia Thainara. 10-3 for Lookboonme, 12-1 for Thainara. Thainara came into the UFC off the Contender Series and completely destroyed Molly McCann. Took her down, pieced her up, and then ended up submitting her. I might be a little bit biased here. I'm a fan of Lookboonme. I have been for quite some time. But she just never has that sense of urgency, in my opinion. And I really think that's what separates these two fighters, is the sense of urgency. Now, I know on the Contender Series, Thainara, didn't fight with that urgency. But when she came into the UFC, she fought Molly McCann. She was looking for a finish, She was on top. She was landing ground and pound. She was looking for the jiu-jitsu and the subs. And I feel like she's got much better grappling than Lookboonme here. Now, Lookboonme has gotten better with the jiu-jitsu. She's gotten better with the grappling. She's gotten better at getting takedowns of her own. She's even got a submission win under her belt in the UFC. I do think that Lookboonme is going to be the better striker on the feet, but I also think Thainara is long, rangy, and a solid striker in her own right, who's going to come into this fight with a 5.5-inch reach advantage. So I feel like the clear advantage in this fight is going to be the grappling, top control, and submissions of Thainara, while I think on the feet, Lookboonme is the better, by-the-book, cleaner Muay Thai kickboxer. This isn't Muay Thai, this is MMA. And I feel like with the threat of the takedown, with the threat of the grappling, the striking of Thainara is going to be able to work. Coming in with a 5.5-inch reach advantage, like that means something, you know what I mean? So I think she's going to be harder to hit than Lookboonme anticipates. And I also think that if Lookboonme starts to close the distance and pressure and looks to clinch her up and tie her up, I think that Thainara is going to be able to compete in the clinch and probably use the clinch to get some takedowns and then control from the top and land ground and pound, which can tire out Lookboonme and eventually set up a potential submission win for Thainara in the later rounds. So I'm actually going to go out and take, I know she's the favorite, so it's not like, oh my God, you're picking a big underdog right out the gate. I am going with the favorite, but I think a lot of people are going to see that plus 200 on Loma Lookboonme, and they're going to want to take the advantage of that. I just don't think she fights with enough urgency to make me confident in picking her, and I see a clear hole in the grappling and a fighter who, yes, is better on the feet, but like I said, I think the length and reach and height of Thainara can make it more competitive than Lookboonme might be anticipating. So give me Alexia Thainara. I'm going to take her to win. I think she, lands some good shots on the feet, uses her length and reach to kind of hold off Lookboonme, and then when she closes the distance, I think she uses her wrestling, gets the takedowns and looks for submission. I'm going to say she gets the sub. Give me Alexia Thainara to win via a second round rear naked choke submission. I'm going to go back to the well with the sub on Thainara. I just think that she's going to be able to exploit the grappling holes that we've seen other fighters take advantage of with Lookboonme. And yes, she's improved, but I think Thainara has the recipe with how long and lengthy she is on the feet to be able to open up those grappling exchanges and then win with a submission. So I'm going to take Alexia Thainara, round 2, rear naked choke submission, and we'll move on to the next one. All right, next fight up is in the bantamweight division. You have a battle between Colby Thicknesse taking on Josias Musasa. I'm going to be honest, man. I think Musasa's a fraud. I do not think he's good. I think he has a lot of power, and I think that's all he's got. I don't think he's a great grappler. I don't think he's a great wrestler. The fight on the Contender Series was a lot closer than people were anticipating, and he came in and got dropped with a head kick and then submitted by Carlos Vera. Now, I'm not upset at the fact he got submitted by a guy who's got great jiu-jitsu, but the fact that he got dropped with a head kick and dropped so early, it could be the fact that he was underestimating his opponent. It could be the fact that he just wasn't taking, the opponent seriously. But I'm going to say this is one of those guys who comes in off the Contender Series and is a little bit of a fraud. I know that Alexander Topuria is not Elliott Topuria, but being able to last as long as he did, being able to land some shots of his own and, staying in the fight when people were expecting him to just come in and get finished right out the gate, I think that says something for Colby Thicknesse, and I think Thicknesse also is going to be able to compete on the feet as long as he can survive like the first 6 minutes. I think the first round and a half around there is going to be the most dangerous time for Musasa, but I think he will eventually slow down. It's just going to be the fact of can Thicknesse survive that first round and get away from the big, powerful striker of, Josias Musasa. Get away from the big, powerful shots, the knockout power of Musasa. And I think he does it. I think people are going to come in here and then compare him to like an Atiba Gautier. It's not the same thing, and I don't think Musasa is anywhere near that level, and he doesn't have the power that Gautier has. Now, could he come in here and crack Thicknesse on the chin, drop him and hurt him? Yeah, obviously, that's probably going to be his only win condition. I don't think he takes him down and controls him on the ground. I don't think he takes him down and submits him, and I don't think he does enough work or damage to win a fight that could potentially go 15 minutes, where I would expect the cardio and output and striking of Thicknesse paired with the solid wrestling and jiu-jitsu, where he will throw up submission attempts, he will look for sweeps, he will look to get on top. I think he's just a much, much more dangerous fighter for Musasa, and I think he's very well-rounded, and I think he is the more well-rounded fighter between the two. So yes, could Musasa come out here and bang him up on the feet and knock him out early? Is he going to have more power? Is he probably going to cause more damage with one shot? Yeah, but I don't think he knocks out Colby Thicknesse. I just don't. And if you're not knocking him out, I don't think you're winning. So I'm going to take Colby Thicknesse to win. I'm going to go with another submission here. I could see a TKO even, because I think he will start to slow down Musasa in the midpoint of that second round going into round 3. But I'm going to say he survives round 1, but Musasa wins the first round with landing the bigger shots. But I think in round 2, Thicknesse starts to get the timing. He starts to land his jab. He starts to land his 1-2. He starts to make Musasa telegraph a lot of his shots. The takedowns start to open up. He starts to get on top towards the end of the second round and beat him up. And then I think in round 3, he's going to take him down, get on top, take the back, and get a rear naked choke submission. So give me Colby Thicknesse as the underdog to get the job done here via a third round rear naked choke submission. I think he comes in here. I think he finishes Musasa. It's just going to be that first round that's going to be a little tricky for him. All right, the next fight up is in the lightweight division. You got a battle between Jamie Mullarkey taking on Rolando Bedoya. This is a fight that I don't even want to break down. This is a fight that I don't even really want to give a prediction because, I don't know. In my opinion, it's 50-50. I think the better fighter in terms of skill set is Jamie Mullarkey. I think the fighter with a more well-rounded game, like I said, better skill set is Mullarkey. I think the fighter with more power is Bedoya. I think the fighter who's more durable is Rolando Bedoya. And I think that, Jamie Mullarkey, he could be winning the entire fight and then get dropped and get knocked out. But we don't really see Bedoya, at least in the UFC, have that one-hitter-quitter knockout power. I mean, if you go and you look at his career before the UFC, let's see if I can pull it up here. He's 14-4 overall. I mean, he's coming in with 7 finishes and 7 decisions, so he's basically a 50-50 fighter. But he lost a unanimous decision to Jai Herbert, where the fight really wasn't even close. Herbert outstruck him, kept him on the outside, outboxed him. Kenan Song beat the shit out of him, kept him on the outside, kept him behind a jab. His defense wasn't really there. And then Chaos Williams, he lost a split decision where he came into the UFC on short notice, and it looked like he probably could have got the job done there. Outside of the UFC, you know, he's looked good, but we see this a lot of the times where these guys look great outside the UFC. They come into the UFC, and they just can never put it together. I think Mullarkey's been KO'd. Mullarkey's been hurt a lot of times. Mullarkey's been dropped. But in my opinion, I think Jamie Mullarkey is the more consistent fighter, and I trust him a little bit more than a guy like Rolando Bedoya. I think that, yes, you have to worry about the durability. Yes, you have to worry about the fact that he could be winning the entire fight until he's not, and he could get dropped. But I think Mullarkey has decent boxing. He's seemed to rely more on his grappling and wrestling later in his career, and I think that kind of pushes him towards ways to win the fight. Like, he opens up more opportunities for him to win with his takedowns, with his top control, potentially setting up submissions. But the submission game of Bedoya is dangerous. I'm going to say this fight makes it to the scorecards just because I think Bedoya is very durable. I think if there is a finish in this fight, it's probably Bedoya with a knockout or a potential club and sub. Like, I think the finishing equity of this fight is on the side of Bedoya, but I just think the more well-rounded fighter, the fighter who's fought better competition, is going to be Jamie Mullarkey. And, you know, he beat Francisco Prado, and I know a lot of people are going to crap on Francisco Prado in his UFC career and this and that. Only good win he had is against Otman Azaitar, but man, I think that win over Francisco Prado is a good win for Jamie Mullarkey, and I think he comes in here, I think he's the cleaner striker, I think he lands the cleaner shots, I think he uses his wrestling towards the end of rounds to secure at least 2 out of the 3 rounds, and I'm going to say he doesn't get finished. So give me Jamie Mullarkey. I'm going to take Mullarkey 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he gets the job done on the scorecards, and even if it's a close fight, they might lean towards Mullarkey because of the whole Australia-New Zealand tie-in. So give me Mullarkey 29-28 unanimous decision. I just think he does more. I think he's cleaner. I think he has a little bit better defense than Bedoya, and I think he wins the fight. So Jamie Mullarkey 29-28 unanimous decision. Right, next fight up is in the welterweight division. You got a battle between Jonathan Micallef, I believe his nickname is the Captain, taking on the Welsh gangster Oban Elliott. Elliott came in as like a 6-1 favorite and got absolutely demolished by Sukyon Ko. Taken down, controlled, out-wrestled, out-grappled, had nothing off of his back, and it was basically just like I said, a complete domination from his opponent in Sukyon Ko. Takedowns, control, wrestle, and he really had no answer. And, you know, coming off of that knockout win over, not Oban Elliott, Oban Elliott knocking out Oban Elliott, right? Coming off that knockout win over Basil Hafez, where, yes, we had Oban Elliott. We played him by KO. We played him to win in round 3. I think it was plus 17, plus 1,800. And, you know, we got the job done there. But Basil Hafez, he doesn't have a ton of volume. He doesn't have, like, that well-rounded of a game. He's a solid wrestler, solid jiu-jitsu, but he's kind of a one-shot pony on the feet, and Elliott was able to just pot shot him, outland him, keep him on the outside, use his length and reach, and pick him apart. I don't see him being able to use that length and reach. If anything, I think Jonathan Micallef is going to use a similar game plan to what he did against Kevin Jousset. Now, I think Elliott has more power than Jousset, while I think Jousset is the cleaner striker. I do think that Elliott has more power. He's probably going to look to land front kicks up the middle. He's going to look to crash the pocket with elbows, if I had to guess, and probably going to look to set up that right hand as Micallef sets up that left hook and tries to check hook his way out of the pressure of Oban Elliott. Elliott is a solid pressure fighter, and you saw it on his win. You saw it with his win on the Contender Series, but honestly, guys, in my opinion, I just think Micallef is the better fighter here. I think he's got the much better grappling. I think he's got the much better jiu-jitsu. I think he's much better positionally, and he knows how to manipulate his weight, whether he's on top or on the bottom. He's got good sweeps, good reversals, good counters. Like I said, he floats well on top, and yes, I think Elliott is probably going to come into this fight making a lot of improvements to his defensive grappling, but I also think Micallef is equally able to stand on the feet and outstrike Elliott. I think the cleaner striker is also Jonathan Micallef. I feel like he uses a good jab. He circles out well. He uses that good check hook. He's on the outside, solid kicks to the body. He changes the levels between the body and the head kick. We saw that against Jusei, and it kept Jusei at bay. And I would say Jusei is a better striker than Elliott, aside from the power, which is something I mentioned earlier on in this breakdown. So, I think a lot of people are going to be low on Elliott, and they're going to move over to Micallef coming off of the recent performances. That makes me a little bit nervous because I kind of felt like I would be on an island here in my pick in the underdog Jonathan Micallef, but the line has come a lot closer. A lot of people are putting a little bit of money on Micallef, and that always makes me nervous. I don't ever like to be on the public side. When you're on the public side in terms of a pick, even if it's betting or picking, like a lot of the times when the public is shifting to a side where you figured a lot of people were going to be on the other side, sometimes that can be an issue. But I think in this fight, it's warranted. And I'm going to say Micallef wins this fight. I'm going to say, do I see a finish? Do I see a decision? I'm going to say Micallef actually rocks Elliott with one of those head kicks. And then in the scrambles, he's able to jump on a submission and get the tap. So I'm going to say Micallef comes in, makes good on his second appearance in the UFC, and goes 2-0, and I think he finishes Oban Elliott. I just don't see, Elliott doesn't have a ton of volume. Elliott has a lot of power, but it's like one-shot power, and I think with the way Micallef moves and the angles he cuts and the lateral movement and the footwork, paired with the check hook and the front kicks to the body, the 1-2s, he's very smart on the feet. I think a lot of people come in and they picture Micallef as a mainly grappler who's very uncomfortable on the feet. He can be uncomfortable or can get uncomfortable and can, kind of backpedal at certain points, but I just don't see Elliott having the volume to really push Micallef's cardio and push him back. And if he starts to grapple because he's pressuring and maybe he's not landing that KO shot, I think Micallef out-grapples him. I think he can throw him. I think he can wind up on top. I think he can land some good ground and pound. I think he can go for subs. So, yeah, I'm on Jonathan Micallef. I think the captain gets it done here. Give me Jonathan Micallef to outstrike Oban Elliott, hit him with a big shot as he's crashing in, and then submit him. So I'm going to go Jonathan Micallef to win via a second-round triangle choke submission over Oban, the Welsh gangster, Elliott. I like Micallef a lot here. I think this is a good matchup for him, and I think he's just a better fighter. All right, next fight up is in the middleweight division. You have a battle between Cam Rowston, making his debut off of his second appearance on the Contender Series and the KO win over Brandon Holmes, taking on Andre Petroski. This is one where I know that on the first fight in the Contender Series, Rowston got taken down. He got controlled. He got out-wrestled. And yes, Petroski 100% can do that. So if you're on the side of Petroski, I understand why. He's a good grappler, solid takedowns, really heavy top pressure. And, I think he's a much better grappler than a Torres Finney. But I also think Rowston has developed his takedown defense a little bit better. I think it's still going to be hard to stop Petroski from getting in on his hips and taking him down. But if this fight stays on the feet, I think Rowston is better. Petroski has decent power. We've seen him land big shots, but this guy is terrified to get hit. And even at this point in his career, he's still terrified of getting hit. And I think if there's one thing we've noticed from Rowston, from the first fight of the Contender Series till now, I think it's the fact that he's gotten a lot more comfortable with his striking. And it might be a little bit different here considering the fact that he's facing a primary wrestler, a primary grappler, fighting out of the Gracie Philly team who we know has good takedowns, good top control, good top pressure, and really solid submissions. Rowston is a tall, long, lanky fighter. He could leave his neck out there as he's trying to get up to his feet. But I also feel like between fights, I think Rowston's takedown defense has improved more than Petroski's striking has in the UFC. Now, competition levels, or just overall, not in the UFC, because this is obviously Rowston's first real fight in the UFC. But I think Petroski is basically the same fighter every time we see him. He can get you, he can submit you, but mainly it's forward pressure, takedown, top control, look for submissions, don't get it, stay on top. Look for submissions, don't get it, stay on top. Control from the top and outwork him. We've seen Rowston have issues with that before in a guy like Torres Finney. Now, I'm not a fan of Torres Finney, I did pick him to win his last fight in the UFC. I don't think he's that good, but he is a good wrestler. Is he a better wrestler than Petroski? Probably not. But does he offer more threat on the feet than a guy like Petroski? Yes. And is Rowston's striking getting better? Yes. So with this one, I think if you're heavy on the grappling, you're obviously on Petroski. If you think it's going to be a mainly kickboxing match and the takedowns are going to get stuffed, and you think that Rowston has made better improvements to his takedown defense, then you're probably going to be on the side of Rowston. I'm going to be honest. I think Rowston comes in here and I think he knocks out Petroski. I think he gets it done. I think that this is a fight that, yes, it's a difficult fight. It's a very difficult UFC debut. Petroski's very good, very strong, very heavy on top. If Petroski wins, it's probably a decision. I don't think he submits Rowston. It's possible, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Rowston does have okay jiu-jitsu in his own right, but I think it's mainly a control-based decision on the side of Petroski if he wins. But I'm going to say Cam Rowston gets it done. I think that his confidence in the striking is getting better. I think he's going to expect the takedowns, but I think he's going to be more comfortable and adept to stay on the feet and strike. And I just know Petroski as a guy where once he gets touched, he's kind of just terrified. And he's diving at legs and he's diving at takedowns. And he's strong enough to get those takedowns and that wrestling off. But I think it's going to be hard to hold a guy down who's as long, lanky, and tall as Cam Rowston, who's going to come into this fight with a 5-inch reach advantage. So I'm going to say Rowston actually gets a TKO here. I'm going to wait and see what the prop is on the TKO for Rowston. But I think he knocks out Andre Petroski. I just don't like how Petroski reacts to strikes. And I mean, he could be losing 2 rounds fully, get taken down, controlled, and dominated, and then he could come in and knock out Andre Petroski in the 3rd round. I just don't have any faith in this guy. I don't. I've picked him before. I've sang his praises earlier in his career. He beat Dylan Budka, but he should have got that done a lot easier than he did, even though it was a dominating win. But I feel like he should have been able to finish Dylan Budka. But I think Rowston's better than Budka, and I think he's more dangerous on the feet. He's longer, lankier, going to have that reach advantage. I like Cam Rowston here. Give me Cam Rowston to win. I'm going to say round 2 TKO over Andre Petroski. I think the UFC knows what they're doing here, and I think a lot of people are going to be on Petroski. I think Rowston gets it done, and I think he gets a finish. All right, next fight up is in the light heavyweight division. You got a battle between Navajo Stirling coming in, taking on Rodolfo Bellato, who's coming off of that no contest against Paul Craig, where he basically got, knocked out with the up kick, but it is what it is. Yeah, guys, I think this is a perfect spot for Navajo Stirling. I think Bellato gets hit a lot. I think he also is a guy who can kind of melt people with his pressure, take a beating, and come back. I think Stirling is a little bit too calculated to lose to a guy in Rodolfo Bellato who can be hit, can be cracked, and can be hurt. Would I be surprised if Stirling, went to a decision with this kid? No. I wouldn't be surprised if it went to a decision and Stirling just picked him apart, jabbed, check hooked, low kick, 1-2, move, cross hook, move, feint jab, calf kick, feint teep, move. I would not be surprised if everybody's expecting a KO from Stirling and he just dances around on the outside and wins by a non-competitive, pretty dominant decision. But we saw Ivan Erslan pressure him. We saw Erslan start to put him on the back foot, start to move him backwards. Or I'm sorry, it wasn't Ivan Erslan because he pretty much dominated that fight. It was, let me see, who was it against? It was Tuco Tokos. We knew that Navajo was going to win, but he made it competitive. The Erslan fight, he should have got a 3rd round TKO. I mean, he dropped him, basically knocked him out, but the ref didn't stop it. So it is what it is. But I think he makes good here on the win. I think he gets it done in his hometown, in his home country. I think he wins by knockout. I just feel like Bellato, could he come back later on in the fight? Could he weather the early storm? Maybe. But I think Stirling's just too sharp. I think he's going to stay on the outside, pop the jab, chop the low kicks, throw front kicks to the body. And I think Bellato's just going to come forward and open up a KO. So give me Navajo Stirling to get the job done here. I'm going to say he wins via a second-round knockout over Rodolfo Bellato. But if he does it in the first round, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think this is the one where he goes down and he doesn't get back up. We saw him get dropped and put on death's door by Ihor Potieria. Yeah, I'm not buying that he's going to beat Navajo Stirling. Stirling is clean, crisp, sharp. He's still green in terms of UFC. I don't think he's going to be a champion or anything, but I think he beats Rodolfo Bellato, and I think Bellato runs into a shot and gets knocked out. So give me Navajo Stirling round 2 TKO in this fight over Rodolfo Bellato. All right, next fight up is in the lightweight division. You got a battle between Tom Big Train Nolan taking on Charlie Campbell. Man, this one is a little bit tricky because, you know, Nolan's a long guy. He's lengthy. He's rangy. We've seen that he can use his takedowns. He can use his wrestling. He's getting more comfortable with his grappling. But honestly, I think Charlie Campbell's a bad matchup for him. Do I think Campbell can leave himself open to get countered? Yes. Do I think that Nolan's going to use that length and reach? Yes. But people are looking at the frame of Nolan. Realistically, he only has a half an inch reach advantage. And I know people are probably going to expect, oh, he uses his length and reach better. He stays on the outside better. He's better with the counters and sniping and coming in. And that's possible. And, you know, we did see Charlie Campbell get knocked out by Chris Duncan on the Contender Series after he dropped him and hurt him multiple times. Campbell's got a vicious uppercut, a good left hook, a good right hand. He pairs them together or triples them up, 6-3-2, 1-3-6. 1-2 down the middle. He pops the jab very well. He actually works with, I think it's Joey Ferreira, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, but he's on Instagram. Very good boxing coach, good technique, good technical skills, good drilling, and I think that his boxing is like severely underrated. I think people are going to come in here and expect Nolan to just use that length and reach and pick apart Charlie Campbell. Stay on the outside, avoid getting pressured, avoid getting countered. But I don't know whose chin I trust more because I think both guys can be clipped, both guys can be knocked out. But I almost feel like I trust Campbell's durability a little bit more than I do Tom Nolan because at the time when Chris Duncan knocked him out, Duncan was basically a nobody, but he keeps winning and he keeps winning and he keeps winning. And he just went to war and pretty much dominated Mateusz Rombeski, winning almost every single round, basically, you know, winning every round. And Rombeski may not be the most technical, but he is tough, durable, and a really gritty, tough son of a bitch. So I think you got to give Campbell a little bit of credit there because he almost had Duncan completely finished and knocked out. And the only other person who's put down Chris Duncan in the UFC is Manuel Torres, who's on a hell of a run, aside from getting knocked out by Ignacio Bahamondes. I think that Nolan... You know, people may expect the grappling to be an advantage. I actually think the grappling is better on the side of Campbell. I feel like he could probably get some takedowns, get some top control, and maybe look to set up a submission. I feel like he has the better grappling, but people are going to look at Nolan's last performance against Borshchev and think that he's the much better grappler. I don't think so. I think Nolan is solid. He's got good counters, and Campbell has to be defensive. But that's one thing I like about Charlie Campbell is that it seems like he's gotten better at sitting back and not pressuring forward too much and allowing himself to get countered. I feel like he's come into his own. He's come into himself a little bit, and he's been more comfortable at picking his shots. And when he hurts his opponents, he doesn't rush the finish. And that's what I like. If he rushed, I might be on the side of Tom Nolan. But I think he's more calculated. I think he's more crisp at this point. I think he has the better boxing. I think he has the more dangerous boxing. And I think he has the better jiu-jitsu if we do get into some grappling exchanges in this fight. And I trust his chin more. I do trust his chin more than Tom Nolan. You know, Nolan's looked good against Borshchev, who basically alternates win and loss every time he's in the UFC. Gets hurt a bunch of times, and, you know, he looked good there. But, you know, Nolan just, I don't know, something about him. I like him. I think he's good. I like his striking, his grappling. He's getting better, but I just think Charlie Campbell is a mean son of a bitch, and he's got a lot of power, and it's not just power. He has crisp technique and patience to go along with it, and I think that's going to take him a long way here. I'm going to say Campbell hurts Tom Nolan with a right hand. Nolan tries to cover up and stay against the fence, and I think Campbell knocks him out. I'm going to say Campbell rips the body, rips up top with an uppercut, left hook, right hand. It could look very similar to the Alex Reyes knockout, and that's another thing. Tom Nolan went to a decision with Alex Reyes that was somewhat competitive, even though we knew Nolan won, and Campbell knocked him out in the first round. So MMA math doesn't work, but it can give you some ideas about how future fights are going to go. I do think that sometimes Campbell backs up in a straight line, and that's the one thing I don't love against a long-rangey striker like Nolan. But I'm going to say Campbell rocks Tom Nolan, puts him against the fence, and crumbles him, knocking him out. Give me Charlie Campbell. Give me the cannibal, Charlie Campbell, to get the job done here via a first-round knockout over Tom Big Train Nolan. I'm going with first round. I never pick first rounds. I'm going first round. I just think the power and the technical skills of Campbell are going to be too much for Nolan, who we've seen historically is chinny. So I got Campbell, first round knockout. I think he puts down Tom Nolan and makes a big statement in this W as the underdog. All right, and now we're at a battle in the welterweight division between Jake, the Celtic Kid Matthews, coming in 22-7, and the man who keeps on trucking and not giving a single fucking Neil Magny, coming back after that TKO victory against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. This guy just will not go away. Magny takes a couple KO losses, comes back, gets a KO of his own. Magny comes in 30 wins, 14 losses. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think Jake Matthews beats the shit out of Neil Magny. You like that intro? You like how I analyze the fight? I think this is a Jake Matthews win all day. Do I think he should be a minus 3, 4, 5, 600 favorite on the money line? No, because it's Neil Magny. Magny can come back. Magny can win. So no. I don't think Matthews should be that big of a favorite. But I think he's going to use his wrestling and grappling here. That's really what I see. I think he uses his wrestling, his takedowns, his grappling. I mean, look what he did to Chitty Bang Bang. Immediately closed the distance, took his back, jumped on his back, got a rear naked choke, finished the fight. I picked Matthews as the underdog. I picked him to win by TKO, I think, and he got the sub. Or I think I picked sub, and it happened in round 1. I picked round 2, 3. Typical shit that happens when you bet on MMA. But I think Matthews is on the career resurgence. I think Neil Magny is at the end of his career. It doesn't always work when you say, oh, one's on the up and up, one's on the downward trend. Sometimes those guys come back. If anybody can come back, it is Neil Magny. Just look at what he did against a dangerous fighter in Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. But realistically, I think Matthews has more power. I think Matthews is the better striker. I don't think Magny's going to be able to pressure and break a guy like Jake Matthews. I think Matthews is the better wrestler. I think Matthews has the much better jiu-jitsu, and I think Matthews is going to exploit the wrestling and takedown defense of Neil Magny. Magny's gotten better at stopping takedowns. He's become a lot harder to take down at this point in his career. His cage wrestling, his defense has gotten better, but I still think Matthews is going to slice right through it. I think Matthews has the better boxing. I think he has more power, and I just think he's going to win, man. I think he might even knock out Neil Magny. Now, I'm not going to come out on a limb and say that he's going to knock out Magny, but it wouldn't surprise me if, he took him down, got on top, and flattened him out with back control and just rained punches and didn't look for a sub. This could be a fight where if you're on the sub prop, I don't want to foreshadow things because I am on Matthews. If you're on the sub prop, he might just take his back, flatten him out, and TKO him, and you're sitting there like, man, why didn't I just take inside the distance? Stuff like that. I will tell you one thing. I don't think this fight goes the distance. I'll tell you two things. I think it's Jake Matthews finishing the fight, and I'll tell you my third and final thing, and I think it's Jake Matthews winning via a submission. I would say probably an arm triangle choke or a rear naked choke. Those are going to be the two options I pick. I think it's one of those. But I'm going to say Matthews uses the wrestling, takes him down, softens him up, beats him up, and I think he finishes him with an arm triangle. I've seen Magny get finished with an arm triangle before. I think we get another one here. Matthews has solid jiu-jitsu. He's strong on top, and I think this is going to be a breakout performance for Jake Matthews in Australia. So give me Jake, the Celtic Kid Matthews. Give me Matthews, round 2 arm triangle choke submission over Neil Magny. All right, next fight up is in the featherweight division. You have a battle between Jack Farr Jenkins taking on Ramon Taveras. This is one that I think is pretty much a coin flip fight, guys. I really do. We are not going to really expect Jack Jenkins to wrestle or get any takedowns. I think if the wrestling comes from somebody, it's probably going to be Taveras, but for the most part, I think it's going to be a straight kickboxing match. And, a lot of people are going to talk about the leg kicks and how those are going to play a big factor. You're forgetting that Taveras is a southpaw, so the leg kicks are going to be to the inside of the lead leg, which could lead to the back counter straight punch of Ramon Taveras. He also is a bantamweight moving up to featherweight, so he's not going to have that weight cut. He's not going to have the weight management issues, and he'll probably have better cardio coming into this fight and be a little bit more adept at taking shots. To be honest, guys, I think this fight's going to be a 15-minute kickboxing match. I think Jenkins is going to use that inside leg kick or try to use the inside leg kick and then chop that liver shot, considering that Taveras is a southpaw. That lead left hook to the body is going to be there for the liver shot, and he's probably going to try to go jab, cross, liver, low kick to the inside, and then Taveras is going to try to come back with that backhand counter. The boxing is going to be more heavy on the side of Ramon Taveras. Jack can box too, but if this becomes a 15-minute boxing match, I think Taveras wins, and I think Taveras is even live to get a knockout here against Jack Jenkins. I think that Jenkins is clearly going to be the better kicker, and that's probably what's going to lead him to a victory here if he does win. He's going to use the jab, use the 1-2, mainly the backhand, considering they're going to be opposite stances, so it's going to be the check hook instead of the jab and the backhand. But I think it's going to be harder for Jenkins to really commit on those kicks unless he's going to the body or to the head, and I feel like Ramon Taveras is going to be more adept at blocking those body kicks, considering he's probably going to come in with that Philly shell, so he might be able to catch and then roll it off that lead side to where they're not really going to be able to hit those vital organs that cause those drops from those body kicks. I do think that the fighter who's going to be more active in terms of more strikes landed, I actually think it's going to be Taveras, because I think he puts combinations together a little bit better, whereas I think Jack will have more combinations out, like in terms of output, but he's only going to land like big shots. Really, I think that this fight comes down to, do you favor the kickboxing of Jack Jenkins or do you favor the boxing of Ramon Taveras? Now, it is going to be in, Perth, Western Australia. Jack Jenkins comes from Australia, New Zealand. So, the judges could be on the side of Jack Jenkins if it's a very close fight. I'm going to pick... I'm going to pick Jack Jenkins for a pick, but I might have a bet on Taveras. So my pick is going to be Jack Jenkins to win by decision, just because I don't really see a ton of grappling, but if there is grappling, Taveras probably is the one using the wrestling. But I feel like Taveras could get a split decision. I also think Taveras is live to land that backhand and potentially hurt Jack Jenkins and knock him out. His hands are going to be a lot faster than Jenkins, and I think people are sleeping on that. But overall pick, I'm going to take Jenkins. I'm going to take Jenkins by decision, 29-28, split decision for Jack Jenkins. But I did put a bet on Taveras by split. It's plus 1,400, so I just threw like $5 on it. I think those odds are off because I think it's probably going to be a close fight and probably goes to a split. And we saw Taveras win that split decision against Siri Saidi, so it could be a situation where it's a close fight, but the judges do lean towards Ramon Taveras. But overall, I'm going to take Jack Jenkins, 29-28 split decision. I just think maybe he's going to have the more impactful shots, but everything in me wants to take Ramon Taveras, and I think he's definitely live, but I'm going to pick Jenkins. All right, next fight up is in the light heavyweight division. You got a battle between Jimmy the Brute Crute taking on Ivan Erslan. This is another one where I kind of see it as a coin flip. I think that if it's grappling based, I think Jimmy Crute wins. I think if it stays on the feet, I think Ivan Erslan probably outstrikes Jimmy Crute and eventually TKOs him. I still believe in my heart of hearts that Jimmy Crute is a very chinny fighter. Like, he looks better in recent performances. He's landed some good shots of his own. He's dropped his opponents. I mean, look at what he did to Rodolfo Bellato, and then Bellato came back, and then that fight ended up being a draw, but it was 2-0, and then Bellato came back in round 3. I think this one comes down to, if Jimmy Crute doesn't get the grappling going, I think Ivan Erslan probably comes in here and eventually just overwhelms Jimmy Crute and knocks him out. I bet Erslan to win on the live line against Iwan Kutelaba at like plus 900, plus 1,000, and it was a split decision. He had already lost the first round, but then he came back, and I thought maybe I could get the job done there, but it didn't happen. But I still think that was a good bet, considering it did end up going to a split decision. Erslan basically got picked apart and outstruck by Navajo Stirling. But, Jimmy Crute isn't that type of striker where he's going to have heavy volume and a bunch of output and wear you out. He's got big power in his right hand, a solid left hook. The straight right and the overhand right are going to be his biggest weapons against Erslan. And Erslan did pretty much get knocked out by Navajo Stirling in that third round. He was getting beat up. He was getting picked apart, but he did get dropped in. Basically knocked out, but somehow survived. So I do worry about the durability on both sides, but if there's one fighter I'm going to lead towards being more durable, it's probably Erslan. More concerns on the durability side would be Jimmy Crute. With this one, I think if Crute takes him down and controls him, he probably eventually just wears him out enough to get a submission. So I think the sub is live for Jimmy Crute. I think that's his path to victory, or the path of least resistance, so to speak. 14-5, 13-4-2. He should be 14-4-1 because he should have won that fight going up against Rodolfo Bellato, but it didn't happen. I do feel like Erslan is the type of guy where he might lose the first round, he might get dominated, and then come back and just overwhelm Jimmy Crute, outwork him, tire him out, and then eventually knock him out. And that's actually what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with a late TKO for Ivan Erslan, or Ivan Erslan, however you want to pronounce his name. I just feel like he's not going to be able to take him down and submit him. I think that the path of least resistance would be the grappling for Jimmy Crute. That's probably going to be the heaviest part of his game plan, but I feel like Erslan can work his way back up. I feel like he will defend the submissions, and I think when we get to the midpoint of the second round and into that third round, like the 7.5 minute mark, that's where I think Erslan might be able to tire out Jimmy Crute, because we know that Crute doesn't really have the gas to go 3 rounds. He can look good for a round and a half, and then start to slow down. I feel like Erslan's the type of fighter who can take advantage of maybe getting dominated early, but coming back and starting to put the boxing combinations, starting to put the pressure, and starting to put the volume on Jimmy Crute, which can draw out those takedown attempts, make them easier to defend, and then lead to a late knockout from Ivan Erslan. So that's actually what I'm going to go with. I think we're going to see a late TKO from Ivan Erslan. I'm going to go with a third round TKO for Erslan over Jimmy Crute. I just feel like he'll get dominated, he'll get beat up early, he'll get taken down, he'll get put in some bad spots, but he'll survive. Crute will start to gas out, start to tire out, and that's when Erslan is going to be able to use that forward pressure, the combinations, and the power to really put it on Jimmy Crute and beat him up. But if Crute takes him down and subs him in round 1, I wouldn't be surprised. I just don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to take Ivan Erslan, third round TKO over Jimmy Crute. I think he's going to overwhelm him, survive an early storm, and then TKO him probably in round 3. All right, and now we're at the main event of the evening in the light heavyweight division between Carlos Blackjack Ulberg taking on Dominic the Devastator Reyes. So this one in particular, I think it's going to be a close fight until somebody dies. Okay, so I basically see this fight playing out as a Reyes either starts to find the timing later on in the fight and gets a late TKO, like in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th. Reyes could spark him in the first round, or Carlos Ulberg could catch Reyes stepping in and knock him out. I don't think either of these guys are historically that durable. I think that either guy could land their big shot, a big left hook, or a big right straight from Carlos Ulberg, or a big straight left hand from Dominic Reyes. I think that either guy could knock out either guy. I see this fight probably ending by knockout, whether it's Reyes knocking out Ulberg or Ulberg knocking out Reyes. I think the fighter who's sharper and more technical is going to be Ulberg, and I know that Ulberg doesn't have a problem staying on that back foot and using the check left hook, using the 1-2, using the counter right hand and the leg kicks to kind of tire out his opponents and just draw them into counters, and I know he won't necessarily rush in and get himself caught. That's the one reason why I'm probably going to lean Carlos Ulberg, because I know that he can stay patient. I know that he can fight a smart game plan for as long as the fight goes. However, this is 25 minutes. This isn't a 15-minute fight. We know that Reyes, can fight into those championship rounds. He can go into the 4th. He can go into the 5th, but we haven't seen that in a very long time. The last time we saw it was when he took on John Jones and arguably beat John Jones for the title, but I don't think you can look at that John Jones fight at this point and, make too many assumptions. Besides, Dominic Reyes should have won that fight, and he was the fighter who was more on during that night. But up until this point, I mean, Reyes is back on a career resurgence after dropping multiple losses and multiple losses by knockout. Knocked out by Jan Blachowicz. Knocked out by Yuri Prohaska. Like, this guy's been slept multiple times. Knocked out by Ryan Spann. But he comes back. He knocks out Dustin Jacoby. He beats the crap out of Anthony Smith, which I don't really think that's an impressive win at this point, but he was a title challenger and a contender at a certain point. And then he comes in and he knocks out Nikita Krylov. Like, Reyes is on a resurgence. He's got 3 wins in a row. He's been looking good. Can he get his 4th win in a row, or will the sharper, more technical, more cerebral striker, in my opinion, in Ulberg, be the guy to finish off Dominic Reyes and kind of end the Cinderella story? That's the part I'm having a little bit of trouble with, because I mean, before he went on this win streak, like I said, I mean, he suffered back-to-back-to-back knockouts and then lost that decision to John Jones. I think that in this fight, like, Reyes could knock out Ulberg. If Ulberg tries to rush in too fast, boom, that left hand could be there and he can knock him out. Reyes could land a left head kick. I think the left head kick is something that, Reyes has always had it in his back pocket, but we don't see him throw head kicks that often, at least in this recent career resurgence. But the fights are ending so early that we don't know if that's going to be, a huge weapon in his game plan. But I do think that the left body kick and the left head kick could be probably the best weapons for Dominic Reyes against a fighter like Ulberg. Pulling him into counters is going to be, the smart thing to do, but Ulberg just sits back and plays on the outside and plays at range so much that I'm not necessarily certain he's going to be able to pull him in and catch him on a counter. Ulberg would have to do something stupid to lose this fight, in my opinion. I feel like he would have to rush in. He would have to get overzealous and overconfident. He would have to basically act like Alonzo Menefield did when Ulberg knocked him out, just rushing forward and leaving his chin in the air and getting knocked out. I think that's kind of, if Ulberg was more of a finisher, I think I could see that happening. But based on the fact that I know he's comfortable staying on the outside and kickboxing, then I think that Ulberg probably outstrikes Dominic Reyes, gets hit with some good shots, but eventually catches him on the chin later on in the fight and knocks him out. He could knock him out early, but I just know that Ulberg is going to be able to stay on the outside and play that technical, bull versus matador style, and Reyes might not be over-aggressive and might play the same game, which could make the fight close, but also make that fight boring with a lot less output. I would not be surprised if Reyes knocked out Ulberg. I really wouldn't, but I'm going to go with Carlos Ulberg to win. I think he finds a knockout in the 3rd round and just catches Dominic Reyes stepping in with that check left hook, or check right hook because he's a southpaw. No. Check left hook. Yeah, check left hook, and then follows up with a right hand against the southpaw, because we know that the jab and the check hook are going to be the biggest weapon, while the backhand of Reyes is going to be a big weapon as well, and that's probably going to be what wins the fight for either guy. It's going to be the jab and the check hook of Ulberg, and it's going to be the back left hand of Dominic Reyes, which is nasty, and it definitely can knock you out, but I feel like you have to get over-aggressive, and that's just something I don't see Ulberg doing. So I'm going to say it's a close fight, and then in the 3rd round, I think Reyes walks into a big shot, gets clipped with that left hook, gets sat down with a right hand, and gets TKO'd. So I'm going to go with Carlos Ulberg. I'm going to go with Blackjack. Give me Blackjack Carlos Ulberg, 3rd round TKO in the main event of UFC Perth. All right, that's it for my preview, predictions, and breakdown. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notification bell with your favorite strike so you don't miss any future uploads from the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out.